discourses. That shows his popularity. And yes, as Sashidhacha just said, we lost a great scholar. I think the bigger loss is that his knowledge is not known to non-Kannada speaking community, the spiritual community of the world itself. I think that is one big negative point of this Madhva community. They restrict their pravachana's writings to only Kannada and Sanskrita. I think it should not be done at all. They should reach out in other languages, yes, mainly English, also Hindi, Tulu, French, whatever. In fact, Sagri Achar himself said at Rajangana just 2 weeks ago during Putiga Mata's Gurukula Gatikotsava, said, please learn English. Only then will the knowledge be transferred to the entire world. I think all of you should take note of this aspect. So, okay, on behalf of everybody, I welcome Mr. Krishna. He has made a big impact, and the topic today is mahavakyas. There are 4 or 5 of them. It's up to Mr. Krishna to choose 1 or 2 as he decides and give us his knowledge, which actually is quite inspiring. So I welcome everybody again and request Mr. Krishna to take over.
Can start now?
Yes, you can start.
Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Harih Om Narasimho Akhilajnana Matadvanta Divakaraha Jayat Yamita Sajnana Subhashitavayonihi Abhramam Bhangarahitam Ajadam Vimalam Sada Ananda Tirthamatulam Bhaje Tapatrayapaham Apadamaudi Paryantam Gurunam Akritim Smaret Tena Vignaha Pranashyante Siddhyanti Tamanorathaha Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Harih Om Harih Om Harih Om. Before we start, I have known, I also known Sagri Acharya for quite some time now. He was my Guruji's, Sri Haridas Bhatt, one of the Gurujis. He and Sagri Acharya were roommates and the same batch in the Purna Prajna Vidyapitha. So he was also reminiscing the same. In fact, I don't know how many of you are aware, Sagri Acharya gave one lecture on Ramachandra Prabhu just 15 minutes or even 10 minutes before he collapsed. And he heard his own classmates, that is Sri Haridas Bhatt's words on Veda Vyasaru before he actually collapsed. So this is the one of the level of sadhana is very evident in the way, what one passes away. It was quite, his both his words and ears were quite tuned to the Lord before the event struck. So that shows the noble personality he was. With all due respects, let's come to our topic here. I will need to share my screen.
Yes, okay, can start.
Yeah, okay.
1 second.
You're able to see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. 1 minute. I need to remove some of these things here. Okay. So we will talk about the mahavakyas. Please let me know if the slides are not readable. Let me go to the main thing. So today, this is what we will cover. I will tell a brief introduction about what the word mahavakya means. And we will talk about Tattvamasi mainly. Okay. I will talk about a little bit on Aham Brahmasmi. I know that you have had one session with Dr. Pratosha earlier on this one. But let me cover that thing a little bit and we will delve into Tattvamasi. We will have to see the other mahavakyas some other time because these things need deeper, they need more time for people to absorb here. Now, what are mahavakyas? Basically, technically, mahavakya is more like a statement. It is not a sentence. It is a statement that is there. The Purva Mimamsakas have used it and Mahavakya and Avantara Vakya used in that particular sense. It does not mean great sentence or great statement. It basically is like a statement of position that is out there. And it is, some sort of what do you call, it's like a Tatparya Linga. It is basically an indicator of, where the Linga, where the purport of a particular passage is. So that is the Mahavakya, that is the technical meaning of that particular word. But in today's world, people use it in a very wrong sense, right? They use it as if it is a great statement, as if there are different levels of statements. So one of the statements is like or take those 4 statements that are out there. There are 4 mahavakyas, that is, at least they are popular. But if you take something like Mathopanishad, that is attributed to Shankaracharya himself, right? They almost talk about some 7. I have earlier read about 5 mahavakyas also. So basically, these are the statements which teach about the identity of the individual soul, that is the jiva, and Paramatma. So that is what is the regular meaning that is told in today's world. You will find a lot of lectures on this. Thou art that, and all sort of meanings are given there. So they are used in the sense that the final purport of the scripture, right? The final purport, as in the main essence, is in teaching this particular identity between the individual soul and Paramatma. And while other statements, while the other statements teach you other things, right? For example, if you do this particular yajnam, then you will go to Swarga. If you do this particular vidya upasana, you will get some sort of benefit. Also, all these things are there, but some of these statements, they take very close to the final truth. And for the person who is hearing them, if the person is having the right samskaras, if the person is has almost reached his pinnacle of sadhana, then these statements will immediately trigger the Advaitic experience and the realization, not even the experience. They will have the realization, and therefore these are called mahavakyas, because they are the ones that take closest, or if not the actual experience itself. Now, for Shankaracharya himself did not use the word mahavakya, at least the way it is used today. Okay, it is something that later people have created. You can see this thing in Vidyaranya's Panchadashi, right? He basically says that mahavakya is after when you all the other vakyas, avantara vakya. Avantara means intermediate. All the other vakyas are like something like an intermediate statement, because they take you to a particular stage in the middle, okay? And they will only teach you about Brahman in an indirect way. Paroksha Brahmadir Bhavet. On the other hand, if you do this mahavakya vichara is an analysis, and you keep ruminating on top of on these statements, when they write some, if your samskaras, everything else is in the right place, then you will quickly have the Advaitic realization. That is the main idea for which he has attributed the word mahavakya, adjective mahavakya, to these statements. Though he also does not mention how many mahavakyas are there. Okay, so but in popular literature today, you will find that these 4 are there: Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, Ayamatma Brahma, Prajnanam Brahma. So I have mentioned the Upanishads from where those are picked up. Now, for us, these are Upanishads, right? So these are Vedic statements. We cannot ignore them. We cannot say that those things are not true, or they speak falsehood. We cannot say those things. We have to interpret the Vedic statement. And now the problem for us is, these statements are actually what has they have perplexed the people who are unable to accept that there is an identity between Jiva and Parabrahma. So that's why you will find statements in Sumad Vijaya, or in even in Manimanjari, or some text like that, which talk about people's inability to accept that I am same as Parabrahman. So people have that genuine problem at their heart. Okay, the Advaitins have tried to remove that thing. Okay, I will talk about how they interpret Tattvamasi later. Okay, we will talk about that in the subsequent slides. Though they have tried to remove that, eventually it comes down to the fact that you need to be able to accept something that is not very given to you in your experience. So how do we deal with that, right? The question. Now, before we go further, I would like to talk about some basics here. These are very well known things. But still it is essential to cover them, right? So whatever knowledge we receive, right, there are 3 potential sources for this, right? We know these things. One is pratyaksha, Okay, for example, right now I am seeing the laptop in front of me, right? Then there is inference. Inference, Anumana is not, the Kannada word is not the word here. The Anumana in Sanskrit means inference, which is that, it is not something that is available to you in your direct perception, but it is something that you can infer, right? So I have given one example there, which is that, we are connected to internet because of you are able to hear me, because I am able to see some icons here and there and so on and so forth. And scripture is the source of anything that is beyond our senses. Okay. So, for example, God exists is how do we know God exists? Because the scripture tells it. And of all the scripture, basically Veda is the main one. Veda is the main one in terms of it. It is Apaurisheya. Therefore, it is It is Nirdosha. It does not have any flaws. Since it is flawless, whatever is told there, we have to accept that. So, scripture is the main source of knowledge when it comes to Atindriya Vastu. So these are the three sources of knowledge, and anything that we see here, anything that we say I know, right, has to fit in between these three things there, right? Now, all good till we come to a point where there are some conflicts here. Okay, so for example, that is the conflict we are going to talk about when we talk about the Dvaita interpretation of the mahavakyas. See, it is very easy for me to basically tell you the Dvaita interpretation directly like that. Okay. But is that going to, it is just like, having one more interpretation, right? You have interpretation 1, you have interpretation 2, there will be, my neighbor will have another interpretation. On what basis will you choose one interpretation over the other? Or will you discard an interpretation? That is what we are trying to figure out here. So this is more like an epistemological problem, which is that, when there are these conflicting sources, if in these situations, I will discard this or I will interpret this differently as compared to this. Or in some other situation, I will basically do the other way around. For example, take the simple thing like, let's say you are there in Treta Yuga and you meet Rama and Lakshmana in the forest. Right? Rama has just, Sita is not visible anymore. And Rama is basically having some tears on his eyes. Now, the tears on the eyes is Pratyaksha. Agama is telling you that Lord is never unhappy. He is always blissful. Okay? And Rama is Paramatma's avatara. So he is also blissful. He is never subject to misery. So you have two conflicting data points here. Right? One, there are tears. Second, the Agama, the scripture, which says that he is not having any pain or misery. Okay. How do you deal with these two things? Basically, we say that, yeah, the tears are, that's just a physical event. We are not denying the tears, but we are saying that the tears imply sadness or pain, the way it does in us, right? If I am crying, it means that I am having some pain in my head. Unless there is some tears of joy kind of thing. Other than that, in general, tears mean there is sadness. The tears imply sadness is an inference thing. It is not Pratyaksha. So we say that this Pratyaksha and the Agama are in this thing. But if the Pratyaksha itself, let's say Rama says, I am sad. You will not say that, but let's say he says that I am sad. You should interpret that in terms of the scripture, because scripture is the one which is going to tell you what is everything about the Atindriya thing. Okay. So anything Atindriya, scripture is the ruler. Anything Pratyaksha. For example, if scripture tells me, right? In fact, Shankaracharya gives a good argument in his Gita Bhashya, very well known. Okay. It's in the 18th Adhyaya. He tells that even 1,000 scriptures cannot make crow white or cannot make fire cold. Even if they tell it 1,000 times, right? Fire is hot. You cannot override that thing. It's ironical that he forgot the same interpretation in other cases, but that's what that's a good principle to have, right? Which is to say that Pratyaksha, if a scripture tells me that there is one golden pot in front of me here, right? I will have to discard that, or I will need to reinterpret that in a different manner. So this is the how we resolve these conflicts between these different pramanas. Now, I would like to take you to one step ahead, right? Which is to look at a problem that was thrown to us by somebody called as Bertrand Russell. His basic point, okay, I have written the full description here. I picked it up from one of the wiki pages here. He basically says this, I mean, he used it for a different purpose. Okay, I will talk about his purpose was basically, what he was trying to highlight the burden of proof. For example, let's say there is an assertion or a claim that there is a teapot, right? A tea saucer rotating between Earth and Mars, right? Now, he will make the claim and somebody says, how do you know that? He says that let's say I make that claim and you ask me, how do you know that? I will retort saying, prove me wrong. What is your proof that it does not exist? So you do not have any proof that there is no such thing. So therefore, I'm basically shifting the burden of proof from myself to you. Okay, I should be the one who is providing a proof, a positive proof for my assertion that there is one such teapot. But instead, I am shifting the burden to the person, whoever is questioning me. Now, instead of doing so, that is the example why he gave this. But he makes a very interesting point there, right? If I tell this thing saying that there is one such China teapot rotating between Earth and Mars, you will immediately question me and you will not even think you are wrong. But if a scripture tells you that, right, then you will start believing it. And in fact, you will think that I am crazy, right? If I question you, if you say that there is one such teapot. So that is the conflict. I mean, his point was to more on the burden of proof, but I am using it for a different purpose, which is to highlight this thing as to where will you draw the boundary between what scripture is telling and what is acceptable to us. Okay, this is the problem that everybody has here, right? Everybody wants to rationalize. What does rationalize mean? Basically, whatever statement is there, you need to make it you need to interpret in such terms that it is acceptable to your line of reasoning or your level of reasoning. What is our level of reasoning? Basically, it is whatever we have seen in normal life, whatever we see in ordinary life, that is rational. If somebody tells me that, Rama had 2 legs and 2 hands, I will not find it troublesome. But if I tell that Rama killed 14,000 people, right, in an instant, then I will find it difficult to believe because it is against what I see as normal. So, but the scripture is telling me, should I accept what the scripture is telling me, or should I interpret it? Should I rationalize that? Should I reinterpret that in such a manner that it fits into my understanding all the time? Now, this is an interesting problem for us, right? If we try to keep doing that all the time, if we try to keep reinterpreting scripture or any statement to fit into what is our acceptable framework, right? We will never learn anything new. Okay, from an epistemological point of view, there is some problem here. It means that scripture cannot tell you about something which is beyond your sensory organs. Okay, which is beyond the grasp of sensory organs. So you must admit that scripture can teach me something new, which I do not know, but it cannot tell me something totally abnormal or extraordinary. So our problem is, because see all the mahavakyas, right? I mean, let me give a brief this thing there. The reason why we are talking about this is these mahavakyas, the way they are interpreted, the way they are communicated today is that they teach difference between jiva, identity between jiva and the Paramatma. Now, which is against our experience. So on what basis do we accept that interpretation? And on what basis do we reject that interpretation? If the basis for rejecting that interpretation is that it is against our experience, well, there are so many other things that the scripture teaches, which are against your against your normal experience. For example, in our day-to-day experience, there is nobody like God, who is Ananta Guna Paripurna and Dosha Dura. But the scripture is telling there is one such being, right? Or the scripture is telling that, the scripture tells that there is some place, there is some state where there is no suffering and only bliss is there, what we call as moksha. That is also not available to us. So on what basis am I rejecting the identity between Jiva and God? And on what basis am I accepting something like that exists, right? Now see here, I mean, I would like your inputs here, right? Let's have a small interaction for next 2-3 minutes. The main idea is that which of these things you feel are acceptable to you, right? Somebody like Ananta Guna Paripurna and Doshadura exists. Do you think it is possible? Because the scripture is telling you that. All of these things are told by scripture, let's say. I would like your inputs. Hello, am I audible?
You are audible. Yes, yes.
Yeah. So let me, I mean, I think I will fill in for you people for now. So this seems okay because see, it does not have anything to do with me, right? There is one such person. 1 minute. Let me put it on slideshow. Is it better now? You're able to see? Yeah. So one such being exists, right? Who is full of virtuous attributes and who does not have any blemish. Is one such thing possible? Well, scripture is telling it is fine, it is possible, so it must be possible. But since it does not, what do you call, it does not claim that, you know, I will be able to see or feel that person right away, right? It is acceptable. A state of no suffering plus only joy exists. Yeah, that is also possible. I will have 10,000 sons in some future birth. Now, this seems little impossible, right? I mean, at the end of it, let's say a human lives for 100 years, right? And he or she becomes, you know, productive only by, let's say, 15th year or something like that, right? At max, you will have 85 people. I mean, even if you're productive all through your life. Now, where is 10,000 sons possible? But let's say the scripture is telling you, no, there is some yogic power by which, you know, just by seeing or by just by thinking, you'll be able to produce kids, right? Okay, that is also, it seems far-fetched, but it is still not implausible, okay? Because it is talking about some state which I do not know. And while the scripture is also admitting that right now you are not there. Okay, till here it is fine. Now see the other one. This is not future, this is now. It says that I have 10,000 arms. Is it possible? No, if any scripture tells me I have 10,000 arms, I will say that is false. If the scripture tells me I am all powerful, I will say it is false. Okay, people will, till here they are with me generally. Now this is where the question goes, because this is what all the mystics, the Advaitic mystics, this is how they put it in you. All knowledge is within you. You are omniscient. So whenever, you know, let's say we think a little bit, and then we come to some point where we say that, you know, I think I knew this thing from before itself, right? Then people will jump on that and claim that all knowledge is within you. I mean, these are all nice mystical statements to be made, right? And people make these statements and they said you are omniscient. Now see, can somebody tell an omniscient person that he is omniscient? You have forgotten, but you are actually omniscient. Is it even feasible? Can an omniscient person, can a sarvajna, can an all-knowing person also forget? It is logically impossible. Okay, so if the scripture tells any such thing, we will have to ditch that scripture, or we'll have to reinterpret that. One of these two things we'll have to do. We cannot take it on face value, right? Same thing goes for other things also, right? There exists a round square. We'll simply ignore such statements. Everything is existent, non-existent, neither existent nor non-existent, both existent and non-existent. It is full of all logical fallacies, right? But just because the scripture is telling, will you accept it or will you ditch the scripture? See, the difference between the first three and this, the last one, right, is that the first three are talking about some possible state in future kind of thing, right? The other ones are talking about now, and they are logical issues. You cannot accept them now. For example, it is impossible that an omniscient being has forgotten, right? Ajnata akhila samvettuhu ghatatena kutaschana, Madhacharya's line. Such a fundamental line. It is like an axe that hits the thing right at the roots, basically, right, of the Advaita thinking. Akhila samvettuhu ajnata na ghatate kutaschana, right? It does not just make sense, right? So if somebody is telling you that you are God, you never experienced pain, right? Your dukkhanubhava, whatever you had is all false. If somebody tells you, you will be very quick in dismissing them. But if a scripture tells you, will you accept it? See, these are not statements about future. The future is not about, it's not telling a future where you will not experience pain or joy. It is telling that even in the past, you never experienced pain or joy. Is that acceptable? Can somebody answer me that? Venkatesh ji?
I would rather listen.
Okay. So the point is very straightforward. Yeah. So the thing is that how much bizarre things or, how much out of the ordinary things can you accept if the scripture is telling you, right? This is exactly same as thing what I was trying to highlight in that Russell's teapot problem, which is that, will you accept if the scripture is telling you that there is one such teapot within sun and earth? So it is a matter of pratyaksha. I need to be able to check on that. And then if it is not available to my pratyaksha, then I will ignore that. If it is already claimed to be outside the pratyaksha, then I will say that, okay, it exists if I know that the scripture is flawless, if the Veda is telling me. Thankfully, Veda does not make any such claims. So therefore, I will reject it. But if the Veda is telling you, you are God, will you accept it is a question. The answer is no, right? We need to draw a line and say that Veda cannot go beyond it cannot override my experience, which is validated and verified. Okay. So that is what I was trying to show here, which is that Anubhava is greater than scripture. Okay. Nacha Anubhava Virodhe Agamasya Pramanyam, Acharya's line. Very nice. Okay. He says, see, right now, I have the knowledge that I exist. I have the knowledge that I am happy, or I slept a while back. I'm experiencing time. I am experiencing space. These Anubhavas, right, are validated, are verified. They are irreversible. Okay, you cannot go back and tell that that Anubhava was false, right? These are ratified. So scripture can never override this Anubhava. So this is a very important point here for us, because this is the foundation on which we build our interpretation for Tattvamasi or any other statements. And none of them should be in conflict with your Anubhava. So what is the nature of our Anubhava? I am limited. I am not omniscient. I am, not all powerful. I experience space. I know myself. Okay. And I know time, right? These things I know. These are not like, my mistaken notions. For example, sometimes, I may mistake a rope and snake kind of thing, right? I may mistake rope to be a snake. It is not like that. I have verified these things. These are all internal anubhavas, which cannot be overwritten by any number of scriptures. Whatever Shankaracharya tells, right? No 1,000 Shrutis cannot make the crow become white or consider crow as white. Same thing applies. None of the scriptures can tell me I am not unlimited. I am not limited. None of the scriptures can tell me I do not have pain, at least sometime in the past. So with these things, let's go to how do we interpret Agama? Okay. So I am trying to make that as the case for why our interpretation, why Madhvacharya's interpretation of Tattvamasi is the right one. Okay. Others are just not right. Okay. So the main thing, none of your interpretation of the scripture should be against Anubhava, which is basically verified experience. If your Anubhava is telling you that, you are so and so, you are limited. You are limited knowledge guy. You are limited capabilities. And if scripture comes and tells you, no, you are infinite, we should be able to call its bluff and tell that, boss, this is not, I will have to interpret you differently. So that is the first rule of Agama interpretation. I have just put some things here. We will come to these things a little later. The second one should be, there should be no badhaka, either within the scripture itself or with the Anubhava again. Okay. So for example, if there is one scripture which says that, you are, you are God. If I interpret like that, it will run into a conflict with another scripture, which tells me that, I am not God. Okay. Now, there is conflict between the scriptures itself. So my interpretation should be in such a way that, the agama there should not be any badhakas within there should not be any obstacles or blockers within the agamas itself, or as the previous point said, or with anubhava. There are other things. See, agama is our only source for anything that is atindriya. Agama is basically scripture, or primarily Veda, and its allied literature like Mahabharata, Ramayana, and Brahma Sutras and Puranas and all of them. But mainly it is Sadagama, right, which is Veda. Now see here, since in regular poetry, right, people, what they do is they fill in words to basically, they are called fillers, right? You use fillers to ensure that your poetry comes of a particular alliteration. Some chandas some vritta is there, right? To fill in that vritta, or to fill in a particular sentence or a poem, you can put in some words like cha, tu, eva, all these things, right? In Sanskrit, it is kind of known there, because you want to put it in a particular rhyming fashion. Now, Veda is not that. In a Veda, if there is a cha or a tu or a eva or whatever of these things, we should have an interpretation where those things are not redundant. This is especially a challenge for the Advaitins. Okay, they do not take these things. We will come to that thing soon. Then there is Mukhyartha and Amukhyartha. This is very important. What Mukhyartha means is the main interpretation, main meaning, and Amukhyartha is the secondary meaning, the primary and the secondary meaning. So we should interpret words according to their Mukhyartha. Okay. So, for example, I'll give you the standard example that is there, right? If I tell, the Ganga is flowing heavily today, right? Today is Ganga Jayanti, by the way, okay? Bhagirathi Jayanti is there. So if they say Ganga is flowing heavily, it means, what does the word Ganga refer to here? It refers to the flow of the water, which is its main meaning. But if I tell you Calcutta is on Ganges, right? That is what we have read in our books. Calcutta is on Ganges. Now, the word Ganga here refers not to the water, not to the flow, but to the banks of that particular river. Okay? So it is connected meaning. It is not the main meaning. Okay? So that is one type of Amukyartha, primary and secondary meaning. We should take the words to indicate their primary meaning rather than secondary meaning. Okay, this is also another problem that these Advaitins will face, right? Because they assume Amukhyartha for across everything. We will come to that thing later. Then the last one, I will ignore the Rudi and Yogika for now. Okay, that is also needed, but the last one is Niravakasha and Savakasha. Niravakasha means basically if something cannot be interpreted as something else. If I make a statement, okay, let's say there are two statements, right? One statement is capable of being interpreted in any fashion. Another statement cannot be interpreted, but it has to stick to a particular interpretation if you follow the rules of interpretation. Now, the one that allows different interpretations is considered Savakasha. The one that allows that does not allow any other interpretation, an alternate interpretation, is called Niravakasha. For example, if I tell, right, only Rudra existed at the time of creation. Now, the Rudra word can mean, the being whose name is Rudra, or it can mean the being who has the quality of Rudratva, who is basically, who can drive away your diseases is called, one who drives away your diseases is called Rudra, right? So whoever has the quality of that is called Rudra. So I can make it in one of those two meanings. On the other hand, let's say there is one statement which says only Narayana existed, no Brahma, Rudra, none of them existed. Okay. Now, so there are two statements. One, Rudra existed, Narayana existed, none of the others existed, including Rudra. So this statement is Savakasha, because the words can be interpreted to mean other things. This statement is Niravakasha when it comes to the saying that Rudra, at least the being that we know, is basically was present in time of creation. So I will reinterpret the Savakasha statement to accommodate the Niravakasha statement, because both of them are pramanas to me. I cannot ignore one of them. I'll have to reinterpret one of them. Which one is reinterpretable? I will reinterpret that. That is considered weaker statement. Okay. These are some of the rules. There are many more rules, and these rules are something that are taught to us during Brahma Sutras, and especially Vishnu Tattva Nirnaya of Srimad Bhacharya. So if you study them, you will be able to get some more understanding on that. Now let's come to our main topic. Sorry for the background, but without that, we will not be able to understand why we are basically going with our different interpretation rather than the superficial interpretation. Right? Aham Brahmasmi. This appears in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Okay, it's an interesting position, right, where it comes. So the question, the previous passage ends with a statement, right? It says that Brahmavit Brahmaiva Bhavati. The knower of Brahman becomes Brahman himself. So that person is asked a question back. Do you think what did Brahman knew? Right? Whatever you are saying, Brahmavit, whoever knows Brahman, the knower of Brahman becomes Brahman himself, is understandable for everything else. But the original thing, right, that Brahman, what about that? Right? So when you say Brahmavit Brahmaiva Bhavati, what did Brahman knew? Okay? And because of which he became Brahman. So this statement is a response to that. Brahmava idamagra asit. Okay? At the time of Pralaya, only Brahman existed. As in, it was the only one active. Okay? Now, only Brahman existed. Tad Atmanameva vet. It knew itself as Aham Brahmasmi iti. Okay? It knew itself as Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. Okay? This is the regular meaning that is given. Then, Vamadeva Rishi. Vamadeva also tells, Vamadeva Rishi also realized this thing, I am Aham Brahmasmi. And he also says, Aham Manuhu, Aham Suryaha Bhavam, I was Manu, I was Surya, all these things, right? And then the Upanishad goes on to tell that, a knower of such Aham Brahmasmi, where much better than a person who does not know these things. And the other one is like a Pashu, and there are so many things that are mentioned after that. So it is not Brahman alone telling I am Aham Brahmasmi. It is Vamadeva Rishi also telling Aham Brahmasmi. Okay. So a very important thing. So therefore we need to figure out why it is, how do we interpret that? So obviously there is one high level Badhaka. I as an individual soul, this is the same thing that I mentioned a while back, right? This is like this. If I am Brahman, it means that Brahman is actually not something to be pursued. God is something not to be pursued because he is also having all the flaws that I have. Then what is the point of any scriptural effort at all? Right? And then all other statements which tell this Brahman is Paripurna, Purna, all these things, they are all false then. So that level of Badhaka anyway exists. There is another Badhaka. Badhaka means blocker to that interpretation. I am Brahman interpretation. There is a Badhaka there. What is the Badhaka? Tad Atmanam eva avet aham Brahmasmi iti. Okay? Which means I knew, Brahman knew itself as I am Brahman is a grammatically invalid thing to say. You can say Brahman knew itself as Brahman or Brahman knew I am Brahman. Both of these things are acceptable, grammatically acceptable. Brahman knew itself as Brahman, acceptable. Brahman knew I am Brahman, acceptable. Brahman knew itself as I am Brahman is grammatically incorrect. Okay? This is the Antaranga Badhaka there. Therefore, what Acharya does, right? He simply puts it as, if your meaning was intended, right? In that statement, then Atmanam word is irrelevant. Okay? It is redundant. Tad Atmanam eva vet aham Brahmasmi iti. That Atmanam is unnecessary, it's superfluous. Now see here. Basically, it makes one of the words, the Advaitic meaning of that thing makes one of the words as redundant. So to remove that redundancy, you have to interpret it differently now. So now what does Acharya say? Therefore, it is not I am Brahman is not the meaning of that word, that phrase. Aham. These are all individual qualities. It is like saying, you know what, I am fair, tall, and what do you call medium? Sorry, what do you call 180 kgs. These are all adjectives. Aham is an adjective. Brahma is an adjective. Asmi is an adjective. It does not mean I am Brahman. Okay. Now these are the adjectives. What do they mean? Aham means aheyam, indiscardable. Right? You can discard anything and everything on earth or anywhere else also, but you cannot be without Brahman. Your dependency on him is there everywhere. Such an important point is therefore described by the word aham. Aheyatvad. Heya means something that can be discarded, something that can be rejected, something that you can live away from, right? Which you should be living away from. Aheyam, something that you cannot do that. This is one of the meanings. Other meanings that Acharya gives is that ham means something that is destructible. Aheyam, ham ha ho tyage, right? Aho tyage. So it means that something that is destructible. Now, aheyam means something that is indestructible. That is the meaning of this word. Similarly, Brahma, this is very important thing. Brahma word appears in our scriptures across the board. What does it mean? Okay, it comes from the word bruha vruddhau iti dhatoh. So when the scripture itself says bruhanto hi yasmin gunaha sab brahma, in whom all the attributes are infinite. One whoever is infinite with virtues is Brahma. Okay, asmi, it does not a verb here. Okay, it is not a verb here. It means it is the knowledge that I always exist. Okay, so now this answers the question that was raised by the original one. What did Brahman knew, right? Because of which it became Brahman. No, the answer is Brahman was always there. It always knew itself as himself as present. He was always infinite and he was always indiscardable, which means that there was never a situation when Brahman did not know himself. So Brahman was always there. That is the answer to that question that was raised in the previous passage. Now, the reason for telling this thing is, this is the real meaning of Aham Brahmasmi. Aham is not a pronoun here. It does not mean I here. It does not mean self. Okay. Now it means ahayam. In fact, in the same Upanishad, right, you will find aham nama abhavat, right? It took the name as aham. Brahman took the name as aham. So aham word is a name. It's a proper noun here. Okay. Not knowing that, it leads to trouble there. Aham also refers to the antaryami basically because of the same quality. Who is aheya? Your antaryami is aheya. Your antaryami is indiscardable. So this meaning is used in other places. Okay, tadyoham, yo so asau, yo asau, so aham. Okay, now that he is, which he is, that I am. Whatever he is, that is me. He is me. Okay, so in all these cases, basically that so is that when you are referring to that, it basically is meaning you are referring to the Paramatma who is present elsewhere or who is across the board kind of thing, right? What this scripture is telling is that my antaryami and is same as the person who is everywhere else. Okay, saha tatatvat saha is there everywhere else. That's why he's called saha. Asau means whoever is there in prana. Mukhya, whoever is controlling even mukhya prana. Okay, asu means prana. Okay, even whoever is controlling mukhya prana is me. Okay, now see here the Upanishad has reversed the things there. Okay, now Acharya has given a different nice meaning in other places also, right? He basically says when I say Chaitro Maitra, Maitrasta Chaitra, when Chaitra and Maitra are extreme friends, right? Oh, I mean in Kannada, right? I hope people know Kannada here. But anyway, the point is, if there is a usage which says that let's say that two very close friends, one of them comes, he says, "Yun bandre, avun bandange." If this guy comes, it is equivalent to the other person coming only. Okay. It basically the idea is that they are so close that you say A is B and B is A. So whenever you use this thing, yun bandre avunu, avun bandre yunu, that means it indicates extreme friendliness or affection for that between two of them. So the same thing is indicated. Okay, Acharya gives this meaning in Brihadaranyaka Bhasha. So whenever you see A is equal to B, that is another meaning that can be used. So we have seen two things here. Okay, one is that, Aham Brahmasmi does not mean I am Brahman. It means Brahman knew itself as indiscardable, infinite, and knower of himself as always present. Now the same thing Vamadeva Rishi also knew. When Vamadeva Rishi says, right, Aham Brahmasmi iti, which means that he knew Brahman as indiscardable, infinite, and knower of himself, that is Brahman, as always present. And when he says, Vamadeva Rishi says, Aham Manuhu, Aham Suryascha Abhavam, he means the same thing. This Aham, my Antaryami, was the Manu, which means that he is the one who is Jnana Rupa. Manu means Jnana, right? Or he is that Aham is the Surya, which means that he is Suri Gamyatvat Surya. He is the one who is reachable by people who have wisdom, who are Jnanis, right? So when Vamadeva Rishi is saying Aham Manu, Aham Suryasta Bhavam, he is not saying I am Manu or I am Surya. He is basically saying my Antaryami is Jnana Rupa. My Antaryami is reachable by wise people, so on and so forth. So this basically changes the entire meaning of that the meaning of this particular Vakya. It is, so we are basically saying there are two types of Badhakas that we are trying to avoid here. One is the overall Badhaka, that it is against my experience that I am God and so on and so forth. Other main thing is that within Aham Brahmasmi, that Atmanam word will become superfluous. It will become redundant. So to avoid both of these things, we have to interpret differently. There is another important rule of any, interpretation. That rule is that if your interpretation is supported by other scriptures, especially like Purana and Itihasa or Pancharatras, then it gets a plus point. Okay, that is more acceptable than any other, regular human interpretation. So Acharya gives other quotes which kind of prove these things, and he has done this thing across his words. So this is the meaning of one of the mahavakyas. We also touched upon some of these things like Tadyoham so yoso soham kind of thing. Now let me quickly go to the other one, which is the Tattvamasi thing, right? Tattvamasi is basically taught by Uddalaka to his son Shvetaketu. Shvetaketu is sent to a Gurukula for 12 years of study. He returns very, haughty and proud. And so Uddalaka sees that and he will ask him, did you learn that, knowing which everything else becomes known? Then Shvetaketu will simply say, no, I do not know. Then Uddalaka will start teaching him lots of stuff. He will basically tell how everything started from Sat, which is existence, or, which is Paramatma. And then he will tell about, how he is the Vacharambhana Shruti is there. There are some passages which talk about how he basically creates, Agni, Surya, Tejas, and all these things, right? And from there, they will again triplicate, right? Triplicate. They will become triple, they will become. That is called Trivrit Karana, right? And they will produce the next layer of gods. And from there, all this creation happened, right? That is what he tells. And then he will also tell him these 9 illustrations, okay? And he will tell them 9 points. And after every point, he will use something like this, okay? He will, Sa Yesho Anima, Etad Atmavidam Sarvam, Tat Satyam, Sa Atma Tattvamasi Shvetaketu iti. Okay? So he will tell this thing. Then he will say, then his son will say, yeah, thank you so much. Please tell me more. Okay? And so, and this is how you should know your Bhagavan. He will say that also. Okay? Now, the problem for us is that Sa Atma Tattvamasi can be split grammatically as Sa Atma Tattvamasi or Sa Atma Atattvamasi also. Okay? In the previous, in the manuscript, after all, Vedic literature has been passed to us orally only, right? So the split can be done any which ways. And even when it was put into manuscripts, right? Earlier, all the words were written without any spaces in between. The concept of space is not there. Okay? So they were all written in a continuous stream of letters. So you will not be able to make, and you in this case, at least, right, it is a case of a sandhi. Saatmat Atattvamasi Shvetaketu. Now, which one will you take is the question. Both splits are acceptable. what we say is that both of them are acceptable to us. Okay. Now we will, before coming to us, let's see what they do about it. Okay. It is when people say thou art that, right? Or this particular thing, we need to understand how the Advaitins interpret that. So that Sa Atma Tat is there, right? That Tat means what? It means Paramatma. What is Paramatma? Which is basically Chaitanya plus all these other attributes like omniscience, omnipotence, and which is infinite knowledge, infinite skill, Shakti, all those things. Tvam means Jiva, which is again consciousness, but with limited knowledge, limited potency. Now, what Tattvamasi is saying is that this is equal to this. How will you interpret that? They are having contradictory attributes. So they came up with a simple solution. We discard whatever those contradictory attributes are there. We will interpret them as false. We will interpret and we will basically, whatever this tat is equal to tvam, that is equal to means samanadhikaranya. Okay. Which basically, I mean, grammatically, it means that both the tat and tvam are in the same vibhakti. That's all it means. But it means that, both the entities are identical. There is only one entity there. That's what it is telling. Now, there have basically, right, given no proof or evidence as to why these things are false. They don't mention anything like that. Just to keep this particular equation, this thing, right? Just to keep this equation, they have ignored everything else out there. Okay. Aitar Atmamidam Sarvam. All of this belongs to the Atma. He is owned by Atma. He is the Swami. Atma means Swami. Okay, that is one more word. We will come to that thing a little later. Okay, but they all say they interpret, they don't get that thing also right. According to them, nothing else exists. Only Atma thing exists. Right? Then what is the meaning of saying all of this is Atma? Right? Because there is nothing else. Only Atma exists. Then what does it mean to say that Atma midam sarvam? Okay. So there are multiple issues in their interpretation. Most important thing, what they call as bhagatyaga lakshana, right? Whichever bhaga, whichever part is contradictory, they do tyaga, they ignore that, they discard that. So this is, I mean, just imagine, right? In your mathematics exam, right? You make a mistake. You say instead of writing 100, you write 10,000, or you write 500. And then somebody comes and tells you, no, this is the wrong answer. You tell, no, 100 is equal to 500. Why? Because both of them are numbers. It is as silly as that, this particular interpretation that they come up with. Okay. What do we do? So we accept both interpretations. Okay. There is generally a wrong notion amongst people that, we interpret that as atatvamasi. No, we accept both meanings. Okay. We accept both meanings. We say Tat is there, Tvam is there, Asi is there. Tat means Paramatma, who is Anantaguna Paripurna, Doshadura, Srishtyadi Ashtakartru. He is the one who is the creator of everything. Tvam is Jiva. Now we interpret that as Lakshanikartha. This is Amukyartha. Okay. Which means that Tat Tvamasi means Tena Tvamasi. You are because of him. Okay. Now this is a grammatically acceptable meaning. Okay. Brahmanosya mukham asit. You have heard this thing, right? Brahmana became his mukha. It does not mean like that. It means Brahmana came from his mukha. Okay. That from is there, right? That from thing, which is Panchami Vibhakti, is evident from because we are all come from our mother's womb. We have not come from Bhagavan directly. We cannot see that. Right? Brahmano asya mukham asit. So you cannot take the direct meaning there. So you will interpret that as Lakshana. So Brahmanasya mukhamasid means Brahmana has come from his mukha. Again, not us. Brahmadi devatas, who are the Abhimani devatas for Brahmana Varna, have come from Brahma Paramatma's one of the forms, faces. That's all it means. Now, why are we doing all this interpretation? So that it does not conflict with our experience that we are limited being and so on and so forth. So, Tena Tvamasi. Now, Yuddhalaka is telling, you are haughty. Okay, you think you have learned all these things. But you are there because of him. Tena Tvamasi, Tasmat Tvamasi. You are his property. He owns you. Okay? Te Tvamasi, you are within him. Tasmin Tvamasi, basically. Okay? You are within him. That is the main idea. Now see here. All the conflict that we have with experience is gone. Okay? But one problem is there. Our interpretation is Amukhyartha. It takes the is equal to part is there, right? It takes that instead of putting the Samanadhikaran in its main meaning, we are taking the Lakshanikartha. But what are they doing? They are even worse. They are basically doing Lakshanikartha here and here just to keep this one there. So they are doing Lakshanikartha in two places, Tat and Tvam, and only the Asi part, they are keeping it as is. On the other hand, we are keeping Tat as same, Tvam as same, whatever the main meaning is there, Mukhyartha is same, but the Asi part, we are basically changing the meaning a little bit here and there. Or as you can see, we are changing only the Tat part here. This is if we take the split as Tattvamasi itself. Okay, and this is grammatically valid. This is not something which is Madhvacharya has interpreted that. Saptasu Prathama. Okay, when Prathama Vibhakti is used, it can be taken to mean any of those 7 Vibhaktis, right? It has been told in the grammar rules itself, right? So therefore, it is grammatically valid, it is contextually valid, and it does not conflict with our experience. It does not conflict with the rest of the scripture also. And it does not, ignore any words. Now let's see what all we do, okay? There is another meaning, another split, which is the Atatvamasi. You are not him. That is the meaning of that word. Sa Atma Atatvamasi Shweta Keto. That which is the Atma, that which is the ruler. Atma means the word ruler. It does not mean self. It means Swami. Okay? You are not him. You are trying to be him. You thought you were like him when you came up with all this education, but you are not him. That is what he's trying to teach. And knowing this, you will knowing him, knowing that particular Vishnu, you will know everything else. What it means is that it is equivalent to knowing everything else. Whatever benefits you will get from knowing everything else, the same amount of benefit or even more, you will get by knowing Vishnu. Why are we doing this split is a major question. I mean, just because it is grammatically valid, you will do random splits. The answer is no. See, it is based on the 9 illustrations that Uddalaka has given after that. Okay, based on those 9 illustrations, we can be sure that Atatvamasi is a very valid split. In fact, it is more recommended. It is more preferred than Tattvamasi itself. We don't have any problem with Tattvamasi, but Atatvamasi is also valid and more valid because of what follows there. Now, what are those 9 illustrations? Right? I am going to rush through some of these things. Okay, I will explain 1 or 2 of them, and we will rush through the rest of this. See this one. First one. Sayatha Shakunihi Sutrena Prabadho Disham Paditva Anyatra Ayatam Alabdva Bandhanameva Upashyayate. Basically, it tells in the first illustration, he says, let's say there is a bird that is tied to a particular branch, okay, through a string. It will try to fly somewhere. It will try to go here, fly to go here. It will not be able to go anywhere. It is bound. Then it will not be able to get any other refuge. Then what will it do? To whichever branch it is tied, it will go and it will find its refuge there. Okay. So the same thing applies to the jiva. Okay. I mean, there the words mana and prana are used, but Acharya gives reason as to why we have to interpret that in front of jiva and Vishnu. So you will do million things. You will try to do this, you will try to do to ensure that you get happiness. But final happiness you will get only if you accept that your refuge is Vishnu and you go and then sit on that particular bandhana, that he is the one on which you put all your, if you seek refuge in him, you will be able to get ashraya. Okay. The same Upanishad verse continues. Sanmula Somya Ima Sarva Prajaha. All these people have come from Sanmulaha, they have their sources, have originated from that Sat, which is Bhagavan. Sada Ayatanaha. They are dependent on him always. Sat Pratishtaha. They are in him always. Okay. Now tell me whether does this particular example or the next choice of words, okay, do they by any chance give you the meaning of identity? Is it saying that the bird which is tied to the branch, the bird and branch, is it saying by any chance that they are identical? No way. Right? It is very clear that both of them are different. So whatever you interpret Uddalaka's words, you cannot go against such an example that he has given. And he repeats this kind of example 9 times. Therefore, you should interpret that as Atatvamasi. Okay, Acharya has given other texts which even support the same interpretation. Okay, look at the other one, which is even more explicit. Yatha somya madhu madhukruto nistishtanti nanatyayana. Basically, what it says is that, a bee will collect honey from multiple flowers, right? And it will go to multiple trees, multiple flowers. It will try to get all the honey, okay, all the nectar. It will come and then it will assimilate in one place. Now, when they are in that honeycomb, right, they will not be able to figure out, right? Oh, I have come from this particular flower or this particular tree, or, this particular rasa has come from this particular tree. It will not be able to know. Similarly, okay, when all the beings, sarva praja, ima sarva praja, sati sampadya naviduhu, when they get in during pralaya, they get into God, they do not know, okay, he is my source, he is my this thing, right? And then they do not get liberated. So he have Vyagrova, Simhova, Vrukova, Varahova. Basically, it tells, right, whatever they are, whether it is a tiger or a lion, whatever they are in their Swarupa, they will become that. Yad bhavanti, tat tada bhavanti. Okay. What it means is that people who do not know their creator, who are not aware that, they are in one such God, they will not get good destination. So it is not only telling that there is a difference between you and God, it is also telling that not knowing that difference or ignoring that difference will lead to trouble. Okay. Because it means that, you will become like a Patangova, Damshova, Mashakova. You will become like a mosquito or, one of these birds or whatever it is, right? Which is fly, okay, which will basically a state of ignorance. Okay. Same thing. Ima Somya Nadhya Purastat. All these rivers are going and then they accumulate in the Samudra. Okay. So Samudra eva bhavati. The Samudra is unaffected by those nadis coming there. The Samudra itself is like that. Samudram eva apiyante. They all reach the Samudra. Okay. All the rivers that are coming from east or west or whatever it is, they go to the Samudra. But Samudra is unimpacted, which means that the Samudra, the bowl, the basin, whatever is there is unaffected. It remains as is. So Samudra eva bhavati. It is not telling that the rivers have become the Samudra. If that was the intended meaning, it would have said, the Upanishad would have said, Ta Samudra eva bhavanti. Okay. Look at the careful nature of the careful words there. Sa Samudra eva bhavati. Sa means that Samudra will remain Samudra only. Okay. These nadis will come and go, but that Samudra will be same as is. Similarly, all these beings, Sarva Prajaha, they all come from Sat. They all come from God. They will do this thing and then they will go back there. But they do not know that they have come from God. And what is their fate? Their fate is again the same thing. Simhovya, Vyagrova, Vrukova, Varahova. All these animals are of, basically they are species where ignorance is there. So they will become that. They become that whatever they are, which means that is a mokshasthana, that is an andastamas. They will reach a state of ignorance. Okay. So not knowing God to be your source or from the person who has given you this birth is going to lead you to trouble. So Shvetaketu is being told all these things so that he becomes a little humble, so that he understands the real learning is in knowing Vishnu. Okay. Now the same thing he basically tells in other things also, right? Sa jivena atmana anuprabhutah pepiyamana modamanas tishtati. Okay. So this is about basically one of the trees example, right? If you take a tree and let's say you cut a particular branch, okay, or another branch, that branch will again grow there. As long as the jiva is there, okay? People again have misconfused this jiva to be one of the regular individual souls, but jiva word also means Paramatma, right? In fact, it mainly means Paramatma, because he is the one who enlivens all of us, right? He is the one who is responsible for our life. Therefore, he is called jiva. Okay, jivo vinayita sakshi. You will find this thing in Vishnu Sahasranama also, right? So the word jiva also means Vishnu. In fact, that is the main meaning. So as long as that jiva is there in that tree, right, whichever branch you cut, it will grow back. It will be, or it will, without getting impacted, that the being in that tree, the jiva, the individual soul in that tree will continue to be happy. Modamanas tishtati. On the other hand, if this jiva, that is the Paramatma, if they leave that particular tree and go, whatever you do, that jiva will not come back to life. That tree will not come back to life. Very clear example that, there is a difference between that jiva and everybody else who is subsisting on that particular tree, right? So there are many more such examples. In all these examples, you will find there is a difference which is very large, very strictly, very clearly mentioned in the examples. Advaitins do some sort of they give very evasive replies. We have seen a little bit of Advaita Siddhi on this. They don't take these examples very seriously. They do a lot of thinking on just the word Tattvamasi and Samanadhikaranya and things like that. They totally ignore the context. And there are other examples similarly, right? Here, for example, if you take a Nyagrodha tree, right? I think it is a big banyan kind of thing. Okay, for now we can take that. So he basically says that all of this tree is there in this particular small seed, right? And he'll say, I'm not able to see this particular, he will ask, what is there in this seed by which this tree has grown? Then Shvetaketu will reply, say, I do not know this. So then he will say, yeah, that is the nature of this one. He can reside in such small things. He is not visible, but his effect is visible everywhere. So that is the nature of Bhagavan. Where in this example can you find identity between Jiva and Paramatma? There is no way you can find that thing. So similarly with the salt and salt example and putting salt, he will ask basically Shvetaketu to put salt in water. Next day, when he will say what is there in this one, he will say water is there. Salt is not visible. It has obviously dissolved. And he will say now taste it from this end or this end. And he will basically get water from different ends. And he will show that basically the saltiness is there everywhere, but it is not available to our visual perception. Same thing, you will say that this entire world is his creation. And you will not be able to see him, but you will be able to see his creation, to see his effect. How can this again is very clear, right? That there is a difference between that Lavana and Udaka, that he is there everywhere. He is acting in us, but his action, his effect can be seen, but he cannot be seen directly. Now, same thing here. There are other examples. Some other time we should go to them, all of them in detail. The last one is very important, right? He'll say basically, look, this I think was a old way of the people had so much confidence in how truth speaking people were identified. He'll say, for example, let's say somebody comes and tells that I am speaking the truth or not. You give a hot axe, parachute. If they grasp it, if he's speaking the truth, nothing will happen to him. If he is not speaking the truth, then he will get burnt by that. Very simple way of telling who is telling the truth and who is not telling the truth. Okay, and similarly, he says that same thing, right? If this is the punishment meted to a person who claims that he is the Raja himself. If the person claims that he is not he's the Raja, and then this is what happens, right? Or if he is not the thief, right? Then they will get into this kind of predicament. Now, what Acharya says is that if this particular thing is indication that if people are not thieves, so who are thieves in case of God? Whoever try to steal or misappropriate his qualities, they are thieves, right? If I own something, somebody takes it away without telling me, or even without telling me, without my permission, that person is a thief. So God is there, and we are trying to tell, no, we are that God. It is same as stealing. Stealing his guna is basically to misclaim that his guna is yours. Okay, so all such thieves, they will run into trouble. Very clear case of example where it is talking about a difference between the thief who is speaking the truth and who is not speaking the truth. Whoever is there on the whoever is dependent on Satya, that is Paramatma. Okay, Satyabhisandaha Satyena Atmanam Antardhaya. Okay, whoever thinks of this God called Satya in himself, he will not be able to he will not be burnt by that particular axe, the hot axe. Okay. So there are more, we can go into more details, right? You will be able to see that all these examples, right, point to difference between tat and tvam. Okay. Even the portion before this, when he says Sadeva Somya Idamagra Asit, okay, he will tell how Sat created everything. Okay. Tat Tejo Aikshata. It basically, Tat Aikshata, Tat Tejo Asrujata. It created the Tejas and it created, what do you call, Manaha. It created Prana. Okay. Tejas is Lakshmi. Okay. Because these meanings, these words do not, again, if you take the regular meaning, they will not make sense. So Acharya quotes another work which tells Tejas is Lakshmi, Prana is Prana, Mana is Rudra. So basically, he will create those class of deities who will then go create the next 3 levels of deities, who will then again create the next one. So that is called Trivrit Karana. Okay. So that is how Tattvamasi can be taken as Sa Atma, Tattvamasi can be taken as both Tattvamasi and Atattvamasi. Tattvamasi also means, you are because of him, you are from him, you are his, your creation, or, you are in him. It does not mean you are him. Okay. And Atattvamasi, if you take that split, it means, again, very clearly, it means that you are not that. And that is more justifiable if you look at the illustrations that are subsequent to this particular statement. And another problem is that, this bigger problem actually, the word Atma, right? They think that it refers to the self. Okay. I am Atma Brahma. That is another statements. I am Atma. This self is Brahman. Very clear this thing, right? But that is such an idiotic interpretation, because that Atma is told with Chatushpat later. It has 4 legs or 4 quarters. Does your Atma have 4 quarters? No, they will say, no, that is a figurative interpretation, because that 4 quarters refer to the 4 states. The same thing applies to even to the Atma also. In fact, the Upanishad has warned us, whoever is the support of the entire universe, the heavens and the earth, Yubhadhyayatanam Swashabdat. The sutra is also very clear, right? Whoever is the support of the heavens and the earth, that person is called Atma. It does not mean the self. The main meaning is the Lord. And surprisingly, or even comically, even Shankaracharya refers to Atma as Paramatma in his the same Jubha Tayadana Karana Adhikarana, which is 1.3.1 in Brahma Sutra. So he very clearly says that, Atma word refers to Paramatma only, it does not refer to the individual self. But again, he makes some of these statements that again forget when it comes to another in some other portion, right? Very inconsistent interpretation style. On the other hand, Acharya style is very consistent. He uses this meaning as long as it is applicable. He basically everywhere he goes with 2-3 factors. Is this applicable in this context? Is there a scriptural text, a supporting scriptural text? And then, those are the 2 main measures by which he will go and then give an interpretation. That's why we have to rely always on Madhvacharya's interpretation. With that, there is one last point I would like to make. I have 10 more minutes, so I will just put this one here. So Acharya makes this thing, right? See, wherever you find any statements like this, you are God, okay, or there is only one, or you will become one with God, okay, all of them are Savakasha. Remember, we were trying to say that Niravakasha is greater than Savakasha, right? If there is a statement which says we are one, is by default he says it's a Savakasha thing. If there is a statement which says there are 2 beings here, right, it is difficult to interpret those 2 beings as one. On the other hand, multiplicity can be spoken of as one. Okay. For example, so he gives this example in other places. Okay. Swatantreya visishtatve sthanamatya aikyayorapi sadrishye chaikyavak samyak savakasha yatheshtataha avakashodjita bheda shrutim natibala katham. So basically he says that any of these statements which propose identity or oneness are always Savakasha. Savakasha means they allow another interpretation. For example, I say there is only one powerful person in this village. Okay. Let's say I have made that statement. Okay. Or there is only one, one male in this village. Okay. What does it mean? It doesn't mean there are no other males, but only it means that this one guy has the independence to act. Okay. Now, So the statement is talking about one, though the interpretation has multiplicity there. So oneness is basically, in this case, it is Savakasha. It allows you an interpretation where there is multiplicity also, and one guy is the highlight of the that particular context. Or look at this, the party was saved because of one. Okay. Actually, the main person got selected there. Okay. The main person, if the main person was selected or saved, okay, you say the entire party was saved. Okay. I mean, the recent elections, or even better, right? When Jambavanta, basically when Jambavanta, when and all these kapis are, under the influence of Indrajit's Astra, right? Jambavanta tells this thing. If Hanuman is there, is living, then we are saved. Otherwise, we are not saved. Okay. So he may say, we have won the war just because Hanuman won the war, or Hanuman is alive. Okay. Or Hanuman is, because he is the main guy. He will ensure that everybody else will be saved because of that. So there is, the context is of multiplicity, but to highlight one person as main, you use a singular. You use one. That one person was, the what do you call, oneness statement is there, right? This is the most important, the last one. We are one. Okay, we are one in this matter. When we say we are one in this matter, it means that there was difference of opinion earlier. Now there is no difference of opinion. So this is Matvi Aikya. Aikya Matyam means this only. When our opinions are aligned, then there is Aikamatya. When our opinions are aligned also, we will use statements of identity. We are one, right? So Eki Bhavanti means this only. Or there are some scriptural statements which says that, Jiva being different from Brahman is only because of Maya. When the ignorance goes off, Jiva becomes one with Brahman. There is one such statement in Vishnu Purana. Okay. There are other statements, but let's take this one. What this one means is that till moksha, the Jiva behaves differently. His thinking or opinion is not aligned to what God's opinion or thinking is. In moksha, they are both one, which means that they are both thinking, or they are aligned, their opinions or their choices, whatever you call that, their mati. There is ekata in that. There is unity in that. So because of that, it is what do you call, when there is identity of opinion, people use the word oneness, right? Same thing. The waters became one in the lake, which means that they all came into the same bowl or same basin, right? Same position is there. The cows in Kannada and in local languages, it is very more understandable, right? Akudella ondaitu goshthapadayalli, which means that they all came to the shed. They came to the shed. Instead of saying that they became one in that shed, they will say that, which means that they all came to the same location. So this is Thanaikya. So whenever there is Thanaikya also, the words may speak of identity, but the interpretation is that of multiplicity. So oneness statements are generally Savakasha, therefore they are always weak. On the other hand, if a statement tells there are two of them, one is Dvasuparna Sayuja Sakhaya. One statement, one bird is always very happy and it is not binging on the the things in the tree. The other bird is basically, there are two birds. One is Ishvara, another one is Jiva. Right? The Jiva is suffering. It undergoes all this pain and pleasure both. The Ishvara is not affected. You cannot say they are both one and the same. It is very difficult to say, what do you call, they are both one and the same without bringing in the notion of falsity. You have to say that, the statement of difference, right, is a statement made through false knowledge. So that's what Advaitins happily do. They basically say that any statements that talk about difference is eventually a false statement. So instead of saying it straight on the face, they couch it in nice language. They will say that, you are at this ladder, okay, this step in the ladder where all of them are, you should assume that there is difference. Then slowly you will come to the point and you will rise to the ladder when you will understand that there is no difference. So for you, yeah, for the dim-witted guys, basically you can say there is bheda, But eventually, after doing adhyaropa, after projecting that such a beautiful God and all those things, it will do apavada. It will say this God does not, these attributes are not same. You are one and the same. Basically, it will get you to the point of doing upasana, and then from there, it will help you realize identity. So they have created a huge framework, a huge edifice. It's like a pack of cards which does not have a proper basis. And that's what has been exposed by our Acharya. And this shows in their interpretation of the Shruti also, and their, even later justifications, right? When you see in Advaita Siddhi or other places, you'll be able to see similar justifications. They are all very weak. And since our interpretation is aligned to these rules, these are better interpretations. That is the reason why we should go with Tattvavada interpretation of the mahavakyas. There are other mahavakyas, okay, like Ayam Atma Brahma, which means that, my Antaryami is Parabrahma, Paripurna Brahma. That's what it means. Okay. And Prajnanam Brahma. See, they take one part of this thing. There are some 23 odd names that are given there, right? Brahma is told to be that. They take one and then say any knowledge is Parabrahma. They will interpret like that. And some add, the fifth Mahavakya, Sarvam Khalvamidam Brahma. All of this is Brahman. They interpret that all of this is Brahman as identity statement. Whereas, very clearly for us, Arjuna himself says, right, Sarvam Samapnoshi Tatosi Sarvaha. You are called Sarva because you engulf everything. You have encapsulated everything in you, right? You cover everything. Now, so that is the meaning which they have forgotten. And they assume identity, whereas we basically interpret that as a statement of dependency on God. And ours is better because it is grammatically correct, well suited, logically more suited, and not in conflict with the other scriptures. Yeah, with this, I would like to 1 minute quickly go through the, yeah, that's about it. Sri Madhvesha Krishnarpanamustu.
Sir, you have any time for question answer?
Yes, I have. There is
yes.
Time is
if anybody has questions, please.
Hey, Krishna, hi, Vadiraj here. I actually see Atatvamasi grammatically it is still correct, right? So why Advaitins don't accept Atatvamasi?
Because they did not come up with that.
Okay. None of them, including...
No, 1 minute. I'll tell you. It is not like that. So basically, till Vyasarajuru pointed out that in Nyayamrita, okay,
correct.
They did not realize that, what Acharya is saying. Okay, some of them, they understood that, but they rejected that as not suited or grammatically not right and things like that. But grammatically, Madhusudan Saraswati says that, yes, you are right. Okay, he basically gives another example, Vyasarajara himself. If I say Shabdo Nityaha, okay, if I say Shabdo Nityaha, now this can be split as both Nitya or Anitya in Sanskrit. Okay, now if I say Shabdo Nityaha Kartrutvat, Shabda is Nitya because it is made up. Then you will interpret that, you will split it as Shabdo Anityaha. If I say Shabdo Nityaha Gaganavat, okay, Shabda is Nitya, like the Akasha itself. Then I will split it as Nitya. So the Shabdo and Nityaha can be split as both Nityaha and Anityaha. But based on what comes after that, whether you put Kartrutva or Gagana, you will split it differently.
Correct.
Clearly, based on this illustration here, I will split Atatvamasi or Tattvamasi. Vyasarajara points out this thing there. Madhusudan Saraswati accepts that. But he says that none of your illustrations prove that thing. So he goes on a different tangent after that. But till then, it is correct thing to say that they did not think about it. Okay, none of the previous Advaitins thought about what Acharya is saying. Okay, and even when it stuck, they did not pay too much of attention. They are generally not they don't give too much details to attention anyway. Attention to details anyway. They are not that kind of people. They are, and especially the later ones now, they are more mystic and they will put all sorts of masala there, but it's not textually derivable.
Okay, right. Hey, thanks, man. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your excellent lecture on this. It was really good and it was very, very informative. Thanks a lot.
Any other questions?
This is more. Any questions? Mine is more of a request.
Yeah.
Can I become a platform speaker? Because I had one small experience. I organized one Shibira in Udupi a month ago for women. One well-educated woman stood up and said, she's well read in Madhya Siddhanta. She said, we want speakers like Jaggi Vasudev. She's not saying that he's correct, but the way he presents things is wonderful. We will go to such people. Please provide such people to our Siddhanta. Otherwise, we'll go to them. So what's your take?
First of all, Jaggi Vasudev is a pretty charming person, I would say, but he is not scripturally right. Okay, I mean, her ask, I think, is a valid ask. There are more people who are able to combine charm and logic. They are more needed over there. But one thing, right? Our scripture tells this thing, right? Nayam atma balahinena labhya. Okay, that's what is told in Atharvana Upanishad, right? This Atma is not to be obtained. Basically, Paramatma is not something that we can seek, but that a weak person can seek. Okay? So people need to be inherently capable of their own thought process, a strong thought process. They should not be able to, they should be able to withstand or see beyond the obvious facades of meaning that other people put. They should be able to do strong analysis on their own front. And only such people will be able to eventually reach Paramatma. That's what is told in the Upanishad. So we accept it. And anyway, he also tells in Gita, right? Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschanmam yatra siddhaye. Very clearly, not everybody is eligible to reach there. We will have to obviously do our presentations and all those things. But my humble request is don't get worried if too many people are not getting, I mean, eventually, see, God will, he's the one who is managing everything, right? He will basically get the right people to the right audience and then ensure that they get their input from there. The more show off that we try to do, that badly it will eventually fail. Okay. And I think it's okay to, keep doing our best. Rather than, I do remember there was one set of people who were trying to create this set of pravachanakaras and things like that. My point was that as long as you give the knowledge to people, right, they will figure out what is the right thing and what is not the right thing. And God will ensure that it happens that way. We are not the caretakers. The government is his. So he will eventually get there.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but anyway, I'm not even charming or anything like that, like Mr. Jaggi was there. But yeah, there are other people, I think, who somebody will come up definitely who will be able to present it as smoothly as he does. But I mean, see, one thing is smooth thing, but other thing after that, you'll be able to figure out that it is not logical. It doesn't make sense, right? So till that point, yeah, we will need to wait. Yeah, any other questions?
I think there is no other questions. Let's conclude this program.
Are there, no, there is one on the chat which says that are there any more lectures conducted regularly on Tattvavada? I don't know. That part, Venkatesh ji, you have to tell Mr. Vibhuraj Roy.
Okay.
Let's conclude then.
Yeah, conclude. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your time. Today we have covered the mahavakyas of mainly Tattvamasi and Atatvamasi. It started with Aham Brahmasmi, and later Acharya has explained about Tattvamasi and Atatvamasi in detail. So he has covered three sources of knowledge: Pratyaksha, Anumana, and scripture. Then conflicts between the sources, Anubhava, Sakshi, Pratyaksha, and scripture, and the rules for Agamas, how to interpret this Agamas. He explained Anubhava, no Bhadaka, no redundant words. Mukhyartha is greater than Mukhyartha, then Nirvakasha greater than Savakasha. So finally, he explained, given the examples of Tattvamasi in detail. It was very good actually. So his point was 9 points, but some points is covered in detail. So finally, is completed with the Madhvacharya interpretation, and finally, he gives some examples for that. finally that question and answer also answered in very good way. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your. It's a very good lecture today, and we would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed guest, Mr. K Krishna, and he has delivered many lectures to our TMO group, and in future also we expect some of the some more this kind of lectures. So thank you, sir. Thank you very much, and also thanks to all the audience who participated today. And for everybody, I'm saying good night, good evening, and we'll conclude this session. Thank you. Thank you, Venkatesh Bhatt, for this organizing this wonderful program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, okay.